On the day of my grand wedding with Xie Qingyan, a disheveled woman clutching an infant stumbled into the scene, her cries piercing the air. Furrowing my brows, I was about to gesture for the servants to escort her away when a few lines of strange text suddenly materialized before my eyes. What the hell? The plot has commenced. This is where the female antagonist drives away the heroine, resulting in the male lead's inability to save his child, who perishes in the heroine's embrace. This marks the inception of an agonizing narrative spanning 1,800 chapters. The female antagonist does not escape unscathed either. In her quest to marry the male lead, she causes the death of another's child, only for the male lead to harbor no affection for her. Their wedding night is attended by a stable hand, and she is coerced into bearing 3 children, each of whom meets a tragic end before her very eyes, culminating in a gratifying conclusion. How dare the female antagonist mock the heroine for lacking a prestigious lineage? Ultimately, her entire family faces exile and meets gruesome fates, truly a fitting retribution. A jolt of realization surged through me as I abruptly turned my gaze towards Xie Qingyan. He remained frozen in place, his eyes flitting between the woman and the child, his lips moving slightly, yet he uttered not a single word. I regarded him for a moment, then unexpectedly laughed. If this union were not to be, so be it.
Eins lang.
I implore you, please save our child. The woman rushed into the wedding hall, clutching a swaddled infant in her arms, her cries piercing the air. He is burning with fever. He can hardly breathe. For the sake of his bloodline, I beseech you to save him. He is your son, Xie Lang. Before I could comprehend the situation, the crimson silk in my hand tightened, and Xie Qingyan had already released it, instinctively rushing towards the woman, urgently asking, "Let me see. What is wrong with the child?" The woman, overcome with grief, clutched the infant closer to her chest, incoherently repeating, "He is burning up. I truly do not know what to do. Only you can save him." My brow furrowed. If the child was indeed gravely ill, why had she not sought medical aid, but instead chosen to entangle herself here in the wedding hall? As I pondered this, the bizarre script reappeared before my eyes, even more chaotic than before. How has the plot changed? Shouldn't the villainess have chased them away by now? 1. Where is the promised malicious villainess? This development is amiss. It must have been altered. The trend now is against purely malevolent characters. They all require some inner turmoil. But no matter the changes, the child's high fever is real. Help! I cannot bear to witness this. I closed my eyes, suppressing the tumultuous waves within me. Regardless of whether the strange script was real or not, if Xie Qingyan were to abandon the room full of guests, to forsake me and leave, my family would be utterly disgraced, forever unable to hold our heads high. Contemplating this, I suddenly lifted my hand and threw off my veil. The crimson silk fell to the ground, and the sharp intake of breath from the assembled guests was unmistakable. Without regard for their reactions, I fixed my gaze upon Xie Qingyan and demanded, "Who is she? What is the matter with the child?" Whispers filled the hall. Xie Qingyan's expression stiffened, his gaze evasive, and he finally managed to utter, "Her name is Jiang Wanfeng. She is an old acquaintance of mine. This child is indeed my blood." Having said that, he turned to me anxiously. "Lingxi, I promise to explain everything later, but the child is in dire straits. I cannot stand by and do nothing." As he spoke, he actually intended to embrace the woman and turn to leave.
Stop.
I stepped forward, blocking his path, my voice suddenly turning icy. "Xie Qingyan, today we are wed by Imperial decree. If you step out of this hall now, it would be a blatant act of defiance against the Emperor's command, an affront to the crown. Can your family bear the consequences?" Xie Qingyan's steps froze, his face paling. The script before me began to flutter wildly again. I told you, the villainess never changes her ways. But this time she has learned to wield imperial power against him. But the child is truly on the brink of death. Can we not save the child first? The male lead is in a difficult position, and the female lead is suffering greatly. Isn't the villainess's interference too blatant? Just dragging out the plot? Never mind, I'll watch a little longer. I'm curious to see what other tricks she has up her sleeve. Ignoring the chaotic script, I fixed my gaze on Xie Qingyan, asking each word deliberately. "I will ask you one last time. Will you proceed with the marriage today or not?
Will you stay?
Or will you leave?" In truth, I cared little for whether Xie Qingyan stayed or departed. What I desired was for all the guests to clearly see it was he, Xie Qingyan, who was betraying his vows. And it was the Marquis's household that owed a debt to the Shin family. The one deserving of scorn should never be me. Xie Qingyan's face turned a shade of iron. His lips moved, but he could not find his voice. I let out a cold laugh, sweeping my gaze across the assembly. My voice clear and sharp. Young Master Xie, if you step out of this door today, it will be your family's betrayal of the crown, an affront to the emperor. I, Shin family's daughter, have committed no wrongdoing. Thus, the blame for this broken engagement must rest solely upon your shoulders. Should the emperor's wrath be kindled, do not involve my family in the slightest. Whispers spread through the crowd. The Marquis's face alternated between shades of green and white, and finally, he slammed his hand on the table, rising abruptly, and shouted, "Rebellious son, do not delay the ceremony any longer." But Jiang Wanfeng had knelt on the ground, pleading with the Marquis, "My lord, I beseech you, for the sake of the child who bears the Xie family blood, please save him. He is your grandson." At these words, Xie Qingyan seemed to be pierced by a sudden pain, his eyes reddening as he shouted at his father, "Father, the child is indeed my flesh and blood. Can you bear to watch him die?" He then turned to me, his eyes filled with reproach. "Shinlingxi, I had thought you to be cultured and reasonable, yet you are so cold-blooded and heartless that you can stand by while a dying infant is left to perish." After speaking, he seemed to realize the absurdity of his words and softened his tone. "Lingxi, I truly owe you an apology for today's events. However, this marriage must occur eventually, merely postponed by a few days. You should be more magnanimous so that we can all coexist harmoniously in the future." I laughed in exasperation. "Young Master Xie, you never once mentioned your mistress and illegitimate child before the wedding. This is already deception. If you do not provide me with a satisfactory explanation today, this marriage may indeed not proceed." The guests began to murmur. The legitimate wife has not even entered the household, yet the illegitimate child has already been brought forth. How will Miss Shin navigate this situation in the future? The Marquis's household has indeed acted improperly. The emperor himself bestowed this marriage. Now that it has turned into such a spectacle, does it not disregard the dignity of the Imperial family? Hearing the murmurs around him, the Marquis's complexion shifted from green to white, beads of sweat forming on his brow. He glared at Xie Qingyan, admonishing, "Rebellious son, matters of marriage are not to be trifled with. Return at once to complete the ceremony. The remaining issues can be discussed later." However, Xie Qingyan, provoked by this relentless pressure, his eyes aflame with fury, fiercely shook off his sleeves and shouted, "Discuss? What is there to discuss? You all are forcing me to marry someone I do not love, yet expect me to watch my own flesh and blood die before my eyes? Is this what you want? I tell you, I have no feelings for Shinlingxi. The one I truly love is Wanfeng. The child is also Wanfeng's and mine. As for Shinlingxi, whoever wishes to marry her may do so. If not, then father, why not marry her yourself?" In the ensuing uproar, the Marquis trembled with rage. The script before me began to swirl once more. Although the male lead's words are rather harsh, aren't they? Even with the child on the verge of death. Why are they still arguing over this? Save the child first. Isn't this all the villainess's fault for obstructing? Otherwise, they would have gone to save him by now. Yet the villainess does have a point. In ancient times, being publicly jilted could truly lead to dire consequences. If the male lead wishes to pursue true love, he must bear the responsibility of breaking off the engagement. He cannot benefit from all the good fortune. But why doesn't the female lead seek a doctor first? What use is it to turn to the male lead? Yet these rational voices were quickly drowned out by the increasing condemnation directed at me. I gazed at Xie Qingyan and suddenly laughed, my voice resonating throughout the wedding hall, since young Master Xie has his heart set elsewhere. I shall not be the villain who tears apart a union. This marriage was bestowed upon the Xie and Shin families by the emperor, and it was never stipulated that it must be young Master Xie alone. I turned my gaze towards a quiet figure clad in dark garments seated in the corner, and declared loudly, "Since the legitimate son is unwilling, let us choose another. I wish to marry the Xie family's illegitimate son, Xie Jichen." In that instant, silence fell over the hall. All eyes turned toward the young man in dark clothing, who had remained discreetly in the shadows. He looked up in astonishment, revealing a pale, slender face. The script before me erupted. What the heck? A A shocking twist. A new groom on the spot. Is this the plot I can enjoy for free? I inexplicably find the villainess somewhat impressive. What is going on? Siejichin. That sickly illegitimate son? The villainess has a sharp eye. I heard he will eventually turn dark and stand against the male lead. Though the male lead is indeed lacking today, this illegitimate son does not seem simple. I bet 5 coins he's the hidden powerhouse. I gazed upon the swirling script. Though I did not fully understand the concepts of darkening or hidden power, I could certainly discern the implication of standing against the male lead. To be able to contend with Xie Qingyan is indeed commendable. However, my choice of Siejichan was not solely influenced by that peculiar hint. In truth, prior to our marriage, Siejichan had sought me out, subtly insinuating that Xie Qingyan was not a suitable match. Yet at that time, I paid him little heed. Firstly, the depths of noble families are unfathomable, and the competition for the title of heir is fierce. One cannot dismiss this as merely a scheme by a bastard son to ensnare his legitimate brother. Secondly, my sentiments towards Xie Qingyan were practically non-existent. This union was merely a marriage decreed by Imperial edict. I never cared how many paramours he entertained outside, or whether his heart belonged to me. Maintaining a facade of glory was all that mattered. Were it not for Jiang Wantong's brazen disruption of the wedding today, and for the ominous words that suddenly manifested, I might have truly swallowed my pride and turned a blind eye. You chose him? Xin Linshi. Are you out of your mind? Xie Qingyan seemed to find this a great jest, pointing derisively at the corner. Siejichan is nothing but a hopeless invalid. Surely he won't survive this winter. You marrying him? Are you so eager to become a widow? I met his gaze, a cold smirk playing upon my lips. What of widowhood? It is far better than marrying a spineless coward. Who are you calling a coward? Xie Qingyan retorted angrily. Who do you think I am referring to? Taking a step forward, I bore down on his flushed countenance. If you truly cherished Miss Jiang, why confine her to the shadows simply because of her lowly birth? If you valued power so much that you had to marry me, then why today do you allow me, the Xin family, and your marquis to become the laughingstock of the entire capital? Xie Qingyan, you wish to have your cake and eat it too, yet are incapable of bearing the consequences. Or perhaps, seeing me choose another over you now makes you regretful? Xie Qingyan was momentarily at a loss for words. Yet, Jiang Wanyuan suddenly seized his sleeve, her voice trembling with distress. Xielang. The cries of the child are almost inaudible. He snapped back to reality, as though regaining his resolve, and declared, Shen Linshi, I shall not regret this. Whether you regret it or not, I cannot say. I hope you will not seek me out in the future. With that, he scooped up the child, taking Jiang Wanyuan by the arm, and stormed out of the wedding hall without a backward glance. The words before me began to swirl again. The male lead's actions are rather foolish. His exit was quite decisive. The rapport between the leads has plummeted. What has the screenwriter done? For the love of heaven, this is clearly a ploy to justify the female antagonist's darkening. Such a tired trope. There is surely a redemption arc ahead. The leads must have their reasons. I shall wait for the twist. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and suppressed the tumult of emotions within. In a low voice, I instructed the maid beside me. Go summon my father and mother. Inform them that the Xie family has reached a conclusion, and the two families must renegotiate the marriage. Upon hearing the news, my parents arrived promptly, their expressions grim. My father immediately confronted Marquis Xie, sternly rebuking him for failing to educate his son properly, thus bringing disgrace upon the family name, and even threatening to report him to the emperor. Marquis Xie repeatedly apologized, beads of cold sweat forming on his brow. I stepped forward at the opportune moment. Father, please temper your anger. Although today's events are disheartening, it is unnecessary to let it harm the harmony between our families. Turning to Marquis Xie, I continued. Marquis, since the emperor himself has bestowed this marriage, if we were to annul it today, it would be difficult to explain. In my view, changing the groom is the most prudent course of action. Marquis Xie's expression shifted, finally gritting his teeth. Let it be as you say. I nodded and reminded him. However, the daughter of the Xin family can only marry the heir of the Xie family. Marquis Xie was taken aback, then quickly grasped the implication of my words. His eyes flickered with struggle before he responded. Very well. I shall immediately petition the emperor to deprive that unworthy son of his title and establish Ji-chan as the heir. The words before me swirled once more. The main plot has collapsed? In the original text, the heir was always Xie Qingyan. A classic trope. Surely this is to torment the male lead. He will reclaim it later. Am I the only one who wants to see the female antagonist and the villain become a couple? They would make such a compelling duo. Reclaim it? The things I have seized shall not be returned. Skimming past the tumultuous text, I approached Xie Ji-chan directly. His pallid face revealed no emotions, save for the depths of his eyes, which gazed at me silently. Xie Ji-chan, I met his gaze and asked clearly, "Do you wish to marry me?" Xie Ji-chan raised his eyes to meet mine, and deep within, a current stirred, ultimately crystallizing into a clear response. I am willing. All the formalities were readily available. It was merely a matter of changing the groom. The ceremony concluded, and that very night, news of Xie Qingyan's elopement spread throughout the capital. Everyone speculated where this desperate couple would flee. To everyone's surprise, the next day, during the tea ceremony, Xie Qingyan returned with Jiang Wanyuan. He addressed the stern-faced elders with fervor. Yesterday, I was in the wrong, but it was all for the child. There are 3 forms of unfilial conduct, and not having descendants is the gravest. At least I have ensured the continuation of the Marquise's lineage. No one in the hall responded, who did not know that Jiang Wanyuan hailed from a brothel. Even if she were a refined courtesan, she could not hold her place in the upper echelons of society. I cleared my throat softly, my gaze sweeping over Xie Qingyan and Jiang Wanyuan, my voice low yet clear enough for all to hear. Today is the day of my tea ceremony with Ji-chan. Brother, you bring an outsider into our midst. Do you truly disregard the rules of the Marquisate and my dignity? At my words, Xie Qingyan turned to me, scoffing. You actually married this sickly wretch? Look at him. He likely lacks the strength for the bridal chamber. Miss Shin, you are already beginning to live as a widow. Xie Ji-chan's fingers trembled, his complexion pale. I gently clasped his icy hand, meeting Xie Qingyan's gaze. Brother, your news is woefully outdated. To stand here and speak such arrogance at this juncture truly inspires my admiration. Xie Qingyan frowned. What do you mean? I am the heir to the Marquisate, the rightful successor. You could not marry me, so you are left with a useless man. The one who should be lamenting is you. If you were wise, you would be making amends with me and Wanyuan right now. Perhaps in the future, I might even grant you a concubine's position for your shelter. Jiang Wanyuan, standing beside him, gently urged, Xielang, do not speak so. Sister must be feeling quite hurt. Yet her eyes betrayed a glimmer of triumph. The words before me began to swirl anew. I must say, the male lead's demeanor is quite unsightly. The female lead is equally insipid. For those above, believe this. When something is amiss, there is always a reason. The male lead's actions surely have backing. Has the heir's position not been lost? Has the male lead's halo activated? Seeing these comments, I felt a sense of relief. It appeared the words before me were unaware of my clandestine arrangements. Just then, an urgent announcement echoed from outside. The Imperial decree has arrived. Everyone hastily adjusted their attire and knelt, bowing their heads in silence. The eunuch, with a solemn demeanor, unfurled the bright yellow scroll, his sharp and clear voice resonating throughout the hall. By the will of heaven, the emperor proclaims, it has come to my attention that Marquis Xie Yuan has reported that heir Xie Qingyan has acted improperly, displaying misconduct on his wedding day, thus failing the emperor's grace and proving unworthy of succession. I am greatly dismayed. However, upon review, the Marquisate's second son, Xie Ji-chan, possesses a gentle temperament, is respectful and filial, and is fit for a significant role. Therefore, I approve your petition to depose Xie Qingyan from his title and establish Xie Ji-chan as the heir to the Yongning Marquisate. Thus it is decreed. As the decree concluded, the hall fell into a profound silence. Once the eunuch departed, Xie Qingyan remained kneeling, his complexion as pale as paper, as if his soul had been extracted. Jiang Wanyuan timidly reached out to assist him, but he violently swatted her away, the force causing her to stagger back a few steps. What does this mean? He suddenly lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot and voice hoarse. By what right? By what right was my title taken from me? My mother was the rightful wife. My position is legitimate. How can it possibly fall to him, Xie Ji-chan? Moreover, he is an invalid. Whether he can survive until next year is uncertain.
Why should the title be granted to him?
I furrowed my brow and admonished. Enough of this insolence. Jichuan is now the heir officially bestowed by His Majesty. And your malicious words here are an attempt to curse the heir, to show contempt for the Imperial will, are they not? Upon hearing my words, Xie Qingyan seemed to have finally found an outlet for his pent-up frustration, abruptly pointing at me and vehemently cursing. It is you. It must be you, that venomous woman. Scheming against me. Unable to marry me yourself, you resort to such vile tactics to ensnare me. He lost control of his emotions and raised his hand as if to strike me, but was firmly restrained by Xie Jichuan. Though frail in body, Xie Jichuan's gaze was as sharp as ice. Elder brother, tread carefully. Silence. Lord Xie, straining against his illness, barked. Yesterday's anger had left him pale and feverish. Xie Jichuan quietly supported his father's arm. Lord Xie cast a long, sorrowful glance at him, patting his hand as he said, "Good boy." Then, with a heavy heart, he turned to Xie Qingyan, rebellious son. "This matter is my decree. It is precisely because I have indulged you too much that you have developed such a reckless and irresponsible nature. Do you not realize that had it not been for Jichuan's foresight, our entire household could have been dragged into prison due to your reckless escape from marriage yesterday? You care not for the family's honor or disgrace. You are unworthy of this title of heir." With that, he waved his hand wearily, declaring, "Take him away." The words on the page swirled once more. Who just claimed the male lead had a backup plan? Step forward, if you dare. Just a pathetic coward. Laughable. All that bluster, and it turns out he doesn't even know how he lost his title. No need to rush. It's only natural for the male lead to face some setbacks at the beginning. He will surely rise again. But in the original, the male lead had an easy ride, with no chance for a comeback. This adaptation has added too much drama. This plot has strayed far beyond recognition. It bears no resemblance to the original. Best to treat it as a new story. At this moment, Xie Qingyan appeared utterly dejected, barely able to stand with Jiang Wenyuan's assistance. He slowly lifted his head, casting a venomous glare at me and Xie Jichuan, suddenly sneering. "Very well. I shall wait and see how long you, this ailing wretch, can hold on. The physician has already proclaimed you will not survive this winter. The bloodline of the Xie family now rests solely upon me and you. When your strength wanes, I shall await your pleas." With that, he forcefully pushed aside the servant who approached to assist him, taking Jiang Wenyuan with him, leaving without a backward glance.
Rebellion. Trulli à rebellion.
Lord Xie pointed at Xie Qingyan's departing figure, trembling with rage. Before he could finish, he was seized by a violent cough, spitting blood, his body swaying dangerously. Xie Jichuan's expression changed, and he rushed forward, steadying his father's faltering frame, his voice soft yet resolute. "Father, take care of your health." His elegantly formed fingers firmly supported Lord Xie's arm, while his other hand gently patted his back to ease his breathing. The hall descended into chaos as servants hurriedly provided warm water and cloths. Lord Xie leaned against Xie Jichuan's hand for a while, his breath gradually stabilizing. He waved his hand, his complexion pale, yet he maintained a facade of strength. "It's nothing, just an old ailment. A moment's rest will suffice." His gaze swept over the varied expressions of those present, finally resting upon me and Xie Jichuan. His weary eyes imbued with undeniable authority as he waved his hand. "Let today's matter end here. Courtesies must not be neglected. Lin Shi, Jichuan, refill the tea." Xie Jichuan and I exchanged glances, nodding slightly. The maids had already attentively prepared fresh tea. I lifted my cup, and, along with Xie Jichuan, raised it to our foreheads in the customary salute. After the tea ceremony, Xie Jichuan and I returned to the courtyard. As the door closed, sealing off the clamor outside, I could no longer resist the urge to scrutinize Xie Jichuan closely. His frame was slender, and under the flickering candlelight, his pallor appeared even more pronounced, his breathing seemingly lighter than that of an ordinary person. Although Xie Qingyan's words were venomous, they were not entirely devoid of truth. If he truly did not survive this winter, all my scheming and striving would ultimately be for another's benefit. Xie Jichuan noticed my gaze and looked up at me with a gentle smile, his eyes radiating tranquility. I pondered silently. This man possesses a gentle disposition. And should we bear offspring together, it would surely be preferable to entanglements with someone as cold-hearted as Xie Qingyan. Since we are already wed, it is best to speak plainly. Xie Jichuan, I began, my voice resonating clearly in the quiet room. Are you able to bear children?
Cough.
The hand he had raised to sip from his tea trembled violently, spilling most of the contents and causing him to cough. His pale cheeks suddenly flushed with a faint hue. The words on the page erupted into chaos. Is this what I'm getting for free? A bold declaration. Sister, how fierce. People in ancient times were actually quite open-minded. What happens next? I'm a distinguished VIP. Let me see. According to spoilers from the original, the antagonist is physically robust later but remains childless. Could it be that he truly cannot? Look at the way he gazes at the female lead. He must be capable. I disregarded the increasingly absurd comments and furrowed my brow, focusing on his slight chest rising and falling with each cough, my concern deepening. Yesterday's hastily arranged marriage was unconsummated. I only need a definitive answer. If you truly cannot, I must make other plans. Before I could finish, however, Xie Jichuan abruptly ceased his coughing. He lifted his gaze to meet mine, the depths of his eyes starkly contrasting his usual sickly and gentle demeanor. Before I could react, he unexpectedly stood and swept me into his arms, striding confidently toward the bed. I was so taken aback that I lost my words, only hearing the frantic scribbles on the page. Has the VIP content been unlocked? Pay up, pay up. I'm ready to spend. How did this sickly beauty suddenly become so assertive? Who said he was incapable? Step forward and be contradicted. The next morning, I awoke feeling achy and foreign in my own body. Xie Jichuan had already risen, seated by the window with a book in hand, morning light casting a serene glow upon his still pale profile. Noticing my awakening, he set down his tome and gently inquired, "Awake now?" I beheld his slender form, recalling the events of the previous night, and an unexpected realization dawned upon me. Echoing the words from yesterday's chaotic scribbles, a profound connection. Indeed, it seemed quite fitting. Having missed a night's reading, the bizarre inscriptions had accumulated significantly. As I was attended to by the maidservants for my morning routine, I perused the myriad comments, most of which revolved around Xie Qingyan's recent turmoil. It turned out that after being reprimanded by Lord Xie, he returned to his quarters, only to be met with a resounding slap from his mother. Lady Zhao of Yongning Marquis. The words vividly depicted that scene. Lady Zhao trembled with rage, pointing an accusatory finger at him. All my painstaking efforts over the years have been ruined by your reckless behavior today. Do you think your position as heir is so easily secured? Do you think that frail body was a divine gift? Had it not been for my scheming to weaken him through his meals, keeping him bedridden, how could you have retained this title until now? I sought out the Shin family for you, to leverage their influence, ensuring your path to nobility would be unimpeded. And yet, you have allowed yourself to be bewitched by a courtesan, causing such disgrace at your wedding banquet. Now look, everything is in ruins. Xie Qingyan's face turned ashen. His fists clenched tightly, yet he remained speechless. Beside him, Zhang Wanyuan sobbed pitifully, tugging at his sleeve for a response, but he remained silent. Seeing this, Lady Zhao's fury intensified, turning her ire upon Zhang Wanyuan. What are you crying for? The fortunes of the Marquis household will be wept away by your tears. With your background, you are unworthy even to be a concubine to Yen'er. Do you think I cannot see your intentions? To disrupt Yenu's wedding ceremony. You wish to force him to grant you a title? Zhang Wanyuan wept even more fiercely, yet no one paid her any heed. Lady Zhao, suppressing her anger, coldly addressed Xie Qingyan. It is futile to lament the past. The pressing matter now is to seek a powerful alliance to counter Shin Linshi and reclaim the position of heir. Upon hearing those words, Zhang Wanjian abruptly raised her head, her voice filled with sorrow. But Sir Xie promised to marry me. Zhao's laughter echoed disdainfully, her contempt unapologetic. Marry you? Dream on. The threshold of the Earl of Yongning's residence is not to be sullied by a woman of your ilk. Xie Qingyan remained silent, offering no defense. The words before me surged with fervor. What the hell? So this is how the villain's frailty came to be. Zhao is truly venomous. The male lead isn't saying anything? What a spineless coward. Zhang Wanjian is both foolish and lowly, unable to see her own station. This pair of protagonists has utterly lost all favor. It would be better to watch the female supporting character and the villain pursue their ambitions. Indeed, Xinlinshi and Xie Jichen's storyline is far more engaging. I regarded these comments with a calm demeanor. It was anticipated that Zhao would seek a more suitable match for Xie Qingyan. After all, noble families prioritize reputation and interests. How could they truly allow a courtesan to become the future matriarch? What truly sent chills down my spine were those two words, poisoning. My gaze instinctively turned to Xie Jichen by the window. Was his frail health truly the result of years of poisoning? If that were the case, Zhao's heartlessness was indeed appalling. And if it remained unaddressed, even though Xie Jichen was now a son of the nobility, his days would likely be numbered. My heart constricted, and I immediately issued orders. Scrutinize every aspect of the young master's food, clothing, incense, and utensils. No detail may be overlooked. I needed to ascertain what the poison was and where it lay hidden. No sooner had I given the command than the words before me shifted once more. Wait, isn't the female supporting character's reaction strange? Why is she suddenly investigating poison? Does she seem to know something? Did she overhear our discussion about poisoning? Could it be she possesses mind-reading abilities? Can she see our conversation? This plot is becoming increasingly fantastical. Newcomer, this is no mere supporting character. Her aura and methods clearly indicate she is the protagonist. I paid no heed to these speculations, focusing solely on awaiting the outcome. My father, well aware of the intricate intrigues within noble households, had assigned me a trusted physician skilled in toxicology upon my marriage. Now was the time for his expertise. In less than half a day, the taciturn physician arrived to report, his expression grave. Your Highness, your suspicions were indeed correct. Various substances have been added to the young master's food and incense. He explained. Individually, these are both restorative substances, harmless and beneficial. However, if consumed together over a prolonged period, they create a highly toxic substance that slowly erodes the internal organs, leading to gradual weakness, persistent coughing of blood, and ultimately, a extinguished life. The young master's pulse indicates a long-standing affliction. If this continues for another 3 to 5 months, even a celestial being could not save him. I inhaled sharply. Though I had anticipated this, hearing the irrefutable evidence and the dire consequences sent a chill coursing down my spine.
Zhao,
for the sake of her own son's title, could perpetrate such heinous acts against a legitimate son, committing murder without bloodshed. This internal struggle was indeed more insidious and brutal than I had imagined. I closed my eyes, suppressing my fury, and when I reopened them, my expression was one of icy resolve. Preserve all evidence. We must have both witnesses and material proof. This matter cannot simply be allowed to pass. Several days later, rumors regarding Xie Qingyan's elopement not only failed to subside but rather intensified. Although Zhao scurried about, seeking a more advantageous match for her son, families of repute avoided the situation, fearful of tarnishing their own reputations. Ultimately, Zhao managed to persuade a noblewoman of considerable lineage, albeit with a somewhat awkward familial position in court, with some form of substantial benefit. On the day of the betrothal discussion, while the Earl's residence was not as grand as a wedding, a modest banquet was held, inviting some relatives and the prospective bride's family. I instructed my servants to prepare the poisonous food and incense that Xie Jichen typically used, awaiting the opportune moment. As the banquet progressed and laughter filled the air, I nodded subtly. My trusted maidservant stepped forward, placing the meticulously prepared delicacies and a fragrant incense burner with an unusual sweet aroma onto the table before Zhao.
Zhao,
engaged in conversation with the mother of the noblewoman, inadvertently glanced at the delicacies and the incense burner, her expression suddenly transforming. Her hand trembled violently, knocking the teacup before her to the ground. With a sharp crack, porcelain shattered.
Ah!
She exclaimed, drawing the attention of all the guests. What was the matter with mother? I immediately rose, feigning surprise and concern. Are you unwell? Zhao's complexion drained of color, her breath quickening. Her gaze fixated on the delicacies and the incense burner as if she had seen a ghost. Yet, she quickly regained her composure, insisting, No, it's nothing. My hand just slipped. Quickly, remove these things. They're in the way. The servants, hearing her command, hurried to comply. But I stepped forward at the opportune moment. Halting their actions, my gaze resting upon the items, my tone growing increasingly gentle and concerned, my voice low yet clear enough for all to hear. Mother, please wait. Aren't these the restorative delicacies and calming incense you specifically instructed the kitchen and storeroom to prepare for Jichin daily? I have heard they are exceedingly rare and beneficial. Jichin has not shown significant improvement after using them for some time, and I wished to seize this opportunity to consult with you about any specific usage considerations. Seeing Mother react so dramatically upon encountering them. Could it be that there is something amiss with these items? I furrowed my brow, adopting an expression of genuine concern, yet every word struck Zhao like a needle. Her face paled instantly, her gaze evasive, and she forced a smile. The young master's wife speaks nonsense. They are naturally the finest restorative substances. At that moment, a family elder with close ties to the Imperial physician, intrigued by my words, began to examine the items carefully. Not long after, his expression changed drastically, and he stood abruptly. This red peony essence and mica cream, while separate, are indeed tonics. However, if used together over a long period, they become a deadly poison. Their properties clash, chilling to the bone, leading to gradual weakness and a coughing up of blood. Who would be so malicious as to employ such means? The room erupted in chaos. With irrefutable evidence presented before numerous relatives and betrothal guests, the Earl's face turned ashen, even with the desire to suppress this scandal. It was clear that the truth could not be concealed. He glared at Zhao, whose complexion had turned ghostly pale, nearly collapsing, his eyes filled with rage and disappointment. Ultimately, amidst the whispers and disdainful glances of the crowd, the Earl had no choice but to order the immediate removal of Zhao from her position as matriarch, confining her to the side courtyard until death took her. The words before me rushed by. Well done. A swift and decisive blow. Sister, brave and wise. This maneuver was utterly satisfying. To expose her in front of so many, the Earl could not cover it up impressive. Yet, the turmoil did not cease there. A few days later, an even more shocking piece of news emerged. Jiang Wanjian, seeing her hopes of marrying into the Earl's family dashed, and with Xie Qingyan poised to wed another, somehow acquired a lethal poison. In Xie Qingyan's courtyard, she personally poisoned Zhao, who continued to curse her even while confined, as well as the increasingly silent and despondent Xie Qingyan and even her biological son, whom she regarded as her sole support, ultimately taking her own life with poison. When I learned of this tragic conclusion through the rapidly shifting words before me, my hand faltered over the pen. Though I was startled, it transformed into a mere sigh. Once a life is extinguished, further grievances are futile. Now, what troubled me most was the increasingly clingy Xie Jichin. Since that night we shared, he seemed to have transformed into a different person. My upbringing taught me that a marital relationship should be one of mutual respect and propriety, fostering longevity. Yet, Xie Jichin disregarded this entirely, seemingly desiring to be with me at every moment, requiring my presence while reviewing documents, seeking my company while sipping tea and enjoying the scenery, and even finding every excuse to linger in my chamber at night. Especially after the revelation regarding the poison, he became even more fervent, frequently clasping my hand. His eyelashes lowered, his tone frail and aggrieved. My lady, there are those who wish to harm me. Only by your side do I find solace. Such a demeanor momentarily rendered me incapable of hardening my heart to cast him away. The words before me began to stir once more. Help. He is feigning. He is undoubtedly pretending. In the original text, he didn't flinch even while committing acts of violence. Cunning, scheming beauty. He simply desires to cling to his wife. Ha. Regardless, I shall indulge in this sweetness as a gesture of respect. I gazed upon those inscriptions, a smile tugging at my heart. Whether his reliance was genuine or his weakness an act, at least in this moment, he posed no threat to me. After all, in the secluded depths of the Marquise, having someone to share the days with is not so bad. The narrative concludes here. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to our next story together.